are now live, Chairman.
Okay. I welcome everyone to the committee meeting, both members and the public, and if there are any members of the press who are watching us. Few housekeeping issues. There's new legislation in place which allows us to hold meetings remotely by whichever means are available to the local authority. Mobile phones need to be switched off unless you're using it for hearing this. And all participants follow a slight pause for the technology to display information, and therefore to be patient before speaking. Please only speak when I ask you to. So there's a reminder to turn off your microphone, but keep your video on. Members cannot leave the council chamber or the virtual council chamber during the presentation or debate on any application. If you leave the screen, you effectively are unable to vote on that application. If for any reason you believe you did not hear the entire debate, then please abstain when the time comes to vote on that particular item. Can I remind members of the public that they're present purely to observe the process? If I lose connection, then Councillor Price, as Vice Chairman, will stand in until such time as I can gain connection to the meeting. If I can invite each councillor of the committee to switch on their microphone in turn and introduce themselves. I'm Councillor Quirk. Councillor Beston.
Good afternoon, Councillor Michael Beston.
Councillor Cameron.
Good afternoon, Chairman. Councillor Cameron, present and attending the meeting.
Councillor Hollis.
Good afternoon, Chairman. Richard Hollis.
Councillor Howe. No Councillor Howe. Councillor Jones-Evans. No. Councillor Kilpatrick. Councillor Price. You're there.
Good afternoon, Chairman. Councillor Matthew Price is present.
Councillor Kilpatrick, I missed you. Can't hear you. Have you got your mute on? I can't hear you, John. Have you got your mute on? Well, Councillor Kilpatrick is definitely here, even if I can't hear him. Councillor Tindall.
Hi there, I'm here if you can hear me.
I can indeed. And Councillor Smart. We'll now move on to the agenda. Minutes. Members, can you please advise me if there are any issues with the minutes from the last meeting? Can I take it that you're happy to agree them and for me to sign them off? Nod your heads. Declarations of interest.
Sorry, Chris, it's Councillor Mosdale.
Yeah.
If you look at the sidebar, lots of people haven't been able to come unmuted. So if you look at John Kilpatrick, he's muted and wasn't able to unmute. Shirley Smart wasn't able to unmute. It shows you who's participating. Could we just double check with Dem Services these people can unmute before we carry on the meeting any further, please?
Is that all right now? Yeah.
Yes, Shirley.
can't hear anything now.
That's because nobody's talking now, Shirley. I think I've.
Oh, sorry.
Right.
Yeah, so Councillor Quirk, can you just double check that people are able to unmute? Otherwise, you've got most of this planning committee, and I've got two things on here that I'm interested in.
Okay.
Julie Jones-Evans is definitely here participating.
Yeah, I
so
can see her. Right.
They just need to check they
Councillor-
can mute.
Councillor Smart, would you like to introduce yourself for the benefit of the people who don't know us?
Hello, I'm Councillor Shirley Smart.
And Councillor Jones-Evans, welcome back to the committee. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Thank you very much, Councillor Quirk, Chairman. Yes, happy to be back. Hello.
Is there anyone else who has a problem? Send me a message. Right, we'll move on to declarations of interest. Members were asked to notify the clerk in advance of today's meeting to advise of any declarations of interest. If anyone believes you have an interest that you have not yet been notified to the clerk, please indicate via the chat bar. Clerk, can you read out any declarations you've received?
Chairman, I've received a declaration of interest from Councillor Jones-Evans. She's declared a non-pecuniary interest in item 1 for Branstone Farm, Goddard's Brewery, as she is a commercial brewer.
Okay.
There we are, right meeting.
Who just got there? Who just came in?
It's Ian Ward.
Oh, welcome, Ian. Okay.
I found myself
we move on to
meeting.
if everyone can please mute their microphones. We'll move on to public question time. Statutory orders for virtual meetings only allow for questions to be submitted in writing. The clerk, we do have some questions, don't we?
We do, Chairman. I'm aware that you have been provided with the question and all the answers. If you want to read out the question and then the answer, any questions that we don't get round to within the 15 minutes, the people will still receive a written answer, and I'll still note them in the minutes. It just means that we won't get round to asking them actually during the meeting.
Okay. Sorry, I've lost the questions on my iPad. Just a second. Right. I now have the questions. The first question is from Mr. Edwards. Southern Water has previously identified sewer capacity issues in the public sewers in the area. It is highly probable that a holding tank with pumping station with off-peak pumping will be required to dispose of foul sewage. The holding tank and the pumping station will have to be sited on the development land. Could cause an odour and noise nuisance to existing properties. If the developer planning officer do not provide a detailed answer from Southern Water with respect to the method of disposal of the foul sewage, can the planning committee refuse to discuss the application until the answer is obtained? The LPA can confirm that Southern Water have been consulted in respect to this application. If they object to the application, it will be reasonable for the committee to defer or refuse an application for this issue to be resolved. If Southern Water do not raise an objection, Officers was advised against refusing any application without the support of the statutory consultee in the relevant field. That's question 1. Question 2 is from Mrs. Wade. When the address of the Isle of Wight Council is listed on ownership or tenancy documents submitted by a developer, can Section 73 applications still be determined under delegated powers? The Code of Practice for Members and Officers dealing with planning matters within the Council's constitution sets out the process, paragraph 16C, for determining planning applications if the Council is the landowner. It does not make any distinction between a planning application and an application under Section 673 of the Town and Country Planning Act, and as such the process set out in this paragraph would apply. Second question from the same person. What parcel of land does the Isle of Wight Council own within the curtilage of the Pennyfeathers proposed development in Wight? The red line boundary for the site known as Pennyfeathers includes a number of roads. It is necessary for notice to be served on the council in relation to this land. Furthermore, the council owned an arch-shaped strip of land from Brading Road to land at the rear of Westridge Garage, which was historically set aside for possible highway works. Question. In what do these applications affect environmental impact assessments, Section 106 agreements? The proposed changes will be screened to ensure that no updates are required to the environmental statement. An addendum will be required to the Section 106 agreement to link the application reference numbers in order that the terms of the agreement apply. Question from Dr. Lloyd. In the absence of a second access road, will the Planning Committee please ensure provision is made to provide off-road parking for the residents of the current Forest Hills cul-de-sac and visitors, say 12 parking spaces, and actively pursue making a condition of the proposed development that in the event of either scheme going ahead, the green strip is widened by a further 20 metres to that currently proposed? The answer. It's considered that this is not a question for the Planning Committee, but a representation on current applications. It has therefore been provided to the case officer for those applications. The applications are currently still under consideration by officers, and the application is therefore not ready to be presented to committee for consideration. Question from Mrs. Cook. Application 19-01426 full, and the associated application 19-01415 out are yet to be decided. Both have evoked strong feelings from the consultees, including recommendations for refusal, echoed by multiple objectors from residents. I share all the many concerned recommendations and strongly object to both applications, but my question addresses specifically the condition of restricting on-street parking to make the unsuitable and dangerous access road marginally less so. Section 106 requires plans that mitigate any impact of the development on the local community and infrastructure. Imposition of parking restrictions would devastate this community, where no alternative parking is available due to restrictions already in place within the Gunville area. Does the committee agree to specifically address Section 106 in their written decision, and if against recommendations, and advise the applicants are approved even conditionally, that a full explanation is given regarding the sacrifice of the safety and mental health of the resident community and why an access road from Forest Road hasn't been mandated? This question once again relates to an application which is still being considered by officers and are not yet ready to be presented to the committee for consideration. Any report to committee by officers will outline the comments received by third parties and how they haven't been addressed or haven't been addressed within the application. That's all of our questions. Can we please move on to paper B, the planning application? So we start with application 19-01426 00634 full, Branstone Farm Study Centre. Can I invite the officer to start presenting?
Thank you, Chairman. Afternoon, members, everyone who's listening. If you just bear with me for a moment, I will just try and share my PowerPoint presentation. Right, can everyone see the PowerPoint presentation? You can, good. Right, so I'll start going through it now, and hopefully there's not too long a delay on what I say. I'll delay between each slide as I move on. So the planning application relates to a site which is owned by the council, located at the former Branstone Farm Studies Centre. It's located about 1.4 kilometres to the south-east of Arreton. That's the nearest village to the application site. As you'll see on the slide above you, Winford is nearby, and the site fronts onto Hale Common, or the main road between Sandown and Arreton. Site is a triangular shape, and the proposal is to develop the site with a proposed brewery and visitor centre. And I'll go through the plans and the overall details of the proposals in a moment once we've been through the site characteristics. So just a slightly zoomed in but slightly pale plan showing the site. It is triangular. Alongside the eastern side of the site, and I hope you can see my cursor, is a public right of way. The main road is at the point of the cursor now. And there are some cottages nearby, which I will show you in terms of neighbouring uses in a moment on a different slide. So now moving on to some photographs, hopefully you can all see those. Just showing the application site from the main road at this point. The first slide in the top left-hand corner is a street view picture of the application site, showing the hedge onto the highway and a wide grass verge, and then the field beyond that hedge. It is a fairly open site from this side. The rest of the boundaries, as you'll see from the photographs that we move through, are pretty well screened by trees. So then moving on, the one in the top right hand corner, looking through the existing field gate into the site, you can see the lines of trees. Beyond that is to the north towards Winford. Then moving down into the bottom left hand corner, looking due east towards neighbouring properties and towards the remainder of the Branstone Farm site, and again up towards Winford. And then the final one in this slide, in the bottom right hand corner, is a photograph taken from the southern side of the main road, looking west towards Arreton, just showing the screen nature of the frontage of the site, that hedge. Moving to some internal site photographs then, you can see that the site is currently just a typical agricultural field, laid to pasture. Site boundaries are quite tall with dense lines of trees. And then looking at some of the neighbouring properties close to the site, to the south of the site is a property known as the Cottage, and that is shown in the top two left-hand photographs, the sort of chalk rubble cottage that's white there, and what you'll see is that its main windows are in the front and rear of the cottage, which face away from the site, so that the elevation that faces the site is the blank gable that is onto the highway. There are two cottages located, as you can see on the plan. For the purposes of the plan on this slide, it's in the bottom right hand corner, a pair of cottages shown just outside of the green area. In terms of geographical purposes, they're to the southeast, and they are called Wayside and Linfield. And then the final property, which is a little bit harder to see, is a property within the neighbouring Jubilee Garden Centre, which is directly to the west of the site. You've got the existing garden centre there, and then there is a manager's bungalow within that centre, which bounds the application site, but it's heavily enclosed, as you can see from these photographs. So the bottom photograph you can just see the roof between the line of trees. So there's two scrawny trees in the left-hand part of that photograph. If you look slightly to the right of that, you will just see the gable just poking over the top of the hedge there. So the proposals are for a new brewery. It's the relocation of an existing island business, which is currently located in Ryde, in a rural area still, but they have outgrown their site. They're in existing buildings, and they want to expand into not only producing beers, but beers and ales, but they also want to have a visitors experience as well. So that is the nub of these proposals. So the building would be effectively a large barn-style building built of 3 elements. To the rear of the building would be the main working yard, if you like, where lorries would come in and deliver, and staff would park. And what you can see beyond that, further to the north, are the visitors parking spaces. You'll see a sort of a grey line through the middle of the site. They are power lines. So to the north of those power lines would be the visitors parking areas with car parking and cycle parks. The remainder of the site would be landscaped, and the new vehicle access would be provided on the western side of the site, straight onto the main road. Then, just looking at this in a little bit more detail, the western side of the site, the kind of L shape, would be the working part of the brewery. So that is where all of the beers would be brewed. And so the first section, hopefully you can see my cursor, but on the left hand side of the slide, it are storage areas, cold storage and dry storage areas. Then in the centre, beyond that, in light green, is the loading bay where the vehicles would come in and out. And then beyond that would be the brewing hall with all the tanks. And then the other side of the site, on the right hand side of the slide, is the more sort of visitor experience section, which would have a range of offices, the entrance hall for visitors to come into, and you can see the visitor entrance at the back of that section of the building onto the visitors car parking area. There would also be a bar restaurant at first floor level. Most of it would be internal, and there would be a glazed screen that would overlook the brewing hall, so customers could see through into that brewing hall. You can see there's a kitchen and servery in the top section of that part of the building, a bar in the middle, sort of hexagon shaped bar, and then there would be a covered external seating area, so the roof of that building would totally cover that seating area still, but it would be open to the elements, if you like, at the front. And the next slide will show that in better detail. So the slide in front of you now shows how the building has been designed. These plans are revised following officer advice. Some changes in materials have been made to break up the elevations. The middle section of the roof has been dropped, but the design ethos is for this to look relatively agricultural in appearance. And so the frontage of the site would be landscaped with the building in the middle, and the parking areas all hidden behind the building. So the glazed element that you can see is that first floor restaurant bar area, which will be open until 6 o'clock each night. The applicant's proposal is to open between 7 AM and 6 PM. So the remainder of the day the site will be shut. And then there's some visual images, which has always come with a bit of a health warning. They are just an interpretation of how the building might look, just showing how it would look within the site and the surrounding landscape. And so the top smaller images on the left hand side, the first one right at the top shows the back of the building, which would be the main entrance with the car parking areas. The one directly below that shows the hop fields in front of the building. Then the largest top image, again showing the back of the building, and then the main entrance road that runs down towards Hale Common. And then the bottom larger photograph, or slide, sorry, is showing the back of the building, again looking from the right of way that's at the top of the triangle, if you like. And then the smaller images, again, just showing how the building looked from slightly closer up. And then some effectively sort of photo montages of how the building would look, just bring it a little bit more to life. There would be some proposed mitigation, which I thought I'd show you now, just to save any questions if you had any on landscape mitigation. So effectively, the blue lines, there's a large blue line along the eastern side of the site, one at the top of the Northwich Arcs Round, and then another blue line, which is number 4 on this slide, darker blue line near to Wayside and Linfield Cottages. All of those are proposed either new tree planting schemes or schemes to infill existing gaps in hedgerows, which would then establish over time to screen neighbours and landscape impacts. Then the remainder of the sort of dotted areas, if you like, are clumps and groups of trees, just to give a kind of a ghosting landscape effect, if you like. So the recommendation, Chairman, is for full planning permission. There would be various conditions which I've listed here, just for information. But obviously, if anyone has any questions, do ask later in the process. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Russell. We have 2 speakers on this, Simon Mogford as supporting it, and Councillor Claire Mosdell as a local member. Do we have Simon Mogford in contact?
Good afternoon, I'm here, Simon Mogford.
Good afternoon. You have 3 minutes to present. Start whenever you're ready.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, committee. I want to expand on my earlier written comments. I do support this planning application. Brewery produce a superb ales, and by proposing to build a new brewery and visitor facility will be a fitting tribute to showcase their products. The new location will no doubt put Garlards on the tourist map and will also become a place for us island residents to visit. I believe the proposed location at Branstone will not visually affect the local landscape. There are other businesses of fairly large developments located on the main road, the A3056, Morrison's Supermarket, the industrial estate towards Lake, various garden centres, public houses, and the greenhouses opposite the Fighting Cocks, to name but a few. I believe the proposed Gollards building will be set far enough back from the main road. I have visited a number of similar businesses, and the proposal to construct the building in conjunction with developing part of the land for growing hops will soften the appearance of the main building and enhance the general visual aspect of the proposed Gollards site. The projected traffic movements in and out of the development, in my opinion, are likely to be less than Morrison's Supermarket and probably would be on a par with the nearby Honour and Jeffrey Garden Centre. The road on which the proposed development will be built next to is a main thoroughfare between Sandown, Lake and Newport, and as such of a construction that can deal with that volume of traffic. To enter and exit the already established businesses on that road and the local events such as the Garlic Festival needs to be completed by the road user to move into and onto the property. To enter and exit the proposed Goddard site would be no different and would include the same associated risks. As I mentioned earlier, I visited a number of similar breweries and distillery facilities with visitor centres, and I think this development proposal will be a very popular venue for both tourists and residents. And you are all aware that tourism is the mainstay of the island's economy, and tourism includes the visitors from the mainland and also us island residents in our downtime who enjoy visiting the local attractions. Given the current pandemic the UK finds itself in at the moment, the island's local economy will need all the help it can get to ensure future economic growth, making it worthwhile for mainland visitors to continue travelling to the island. If the local economy doesn't get the boost, the mainland visitors will more than likely find other locations in the UK to visit. I respectfully ask that due consideration be given to allow this application to be approved. Thank you very much indeed for giving me the opportunity to express my views this afternoon.
Thank you very much, Simon. We now have the local member presenting, Councillor Claire Mosdell. Claire.
Thank you. I also would like to support this application, but I see it as rather a bigger picture because I take into account our plans for the whole site. As such, I would like a condition looked at if it could be put onto this site. I should say that due to this, the recent COVID-19 crisis, I think we should do anything in the future to actually increase tourism. So I do welcome this. But one of the things that I would welcome is that coaches are able to go to this site as well. I grew up working at Hazley Manor. First job I ever had was being a potter when that was an active tourist attraction. So was Arreton Manor, an active tourist attraction, and so were Arreton Barns. They all accepted coaches, and it was Arreton was a thriving destination for tourism. I think with the recent things that have happened with Shearing's coach travel going from the island, that we need to do everything we can to encourage that. My condition, sorry, I've got dogs in the house, which always makes it awkward. My condition would be that actually we could extend the 30 miles an hour that's recently been put into Branstone Cross to go to the entrance of where this site would be, considering the next application will be for housing as well, and that is something that the residents have requested. So I do welcome it, but I would look to have a 30 miles an hour extended out to the entrance of that site so we know that everyone could be safe. And I also would like to see that coaches can be accepted there. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Claire. Are there any questions to clarify points that have been made by Russell or anyone else?
Chris,
No points of
Chris, I did say I've got a question to ask, and I put it on that conversation.
I can't find it. Just a sec. Okay, ask away.
Okay, could Russell first of all bring up the picture of the floor plan of the brewery, not the top floor, the ground floor, please? Okay. Now that one there, if you look at the layout, I don't feel that conforms to current environmental health regulations. You have got you've got toilets down there which seem to be for both the staff and visitors. There is no changing rooms, there's no separate toilets for the staff, and there is no changing rooms and when they go from their staff room into what is a bottling hall, which is effectively a food plant. Now that should be there, and normally on places like this you'd have the toilets, you go through, you go to a changing room, you go into the food area, and likewise on the way back. Otherwise you can get cross-contamination from the public and the staff and into the lovely beer. So I think that needs to be reviewed. I'm not sure if it's part of this planning consent, but it might increase the size of the area needed to install all those things. I'd just like the officer's response on that, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Tyndall. I'll just answer a couple of issues as well, if I may, that Councillor Mosdell raised in terms of coaches and the speed limit. So firstly, in terms of the coaches, there's nothing in the planning consent that would rule out coaches going to the site. I think the car park areas are easily big enough, and no doubt the applicant would prefer that they could accept all means of transport anyway. So from our point of view, there's nothing in the planning permission to remove that. In terms of the 30-mile-an-hour speed limit, that is a separate process to planning, and it has to go through its own consultation period. It's not a surefire thing that the 30-mile-an-hour limit would be accepted, particularly on a trunk road on the island, because the legislation requires traffic to keep moving. So that is all something within the gift of the Highway Authority, and it is a different application process, and it's not something we can really condition, particularly where our island roads have said there's no safety reason to reduce to a lower speed limit. In terms of the actual dynamics of the building, if you like, in terms of mixing customers and staff, that is not an issue for planning. We are assessing the land use and whether it's acceptable for this site. That kind of detail will come in at building control and no doubt through whatever legislation there is that environmental health has. And it may result in some amendments to the internal arrangements of the building, but provided those changes were within the envelope of the building and didn't alter the outside, then that kind of thing could be done through an amendment. And in fact, we do it regularly when a planning consent is granted. A specialist engineer comes in and starts looking at safety and those kind of things, and we often get amendments to change the internal layout of buildings, dwellings, all sorts of things.
Chris, can I ask a supplementary, if I may?
Yeah, go. Okay, quick one. Yep.
Yeah, it's just that, will the comment I've made be passed on to the necessary person, or will it just be, it'll disappear? Otherwise, if not, who do I have to say? Can Russell then send me an email of who I should contact with my faults? Thank you.
Okay, we'll come back to that when we actually get to the resolution, because we could put a condition in that they have to review the toilet facilities.
Right, thank you, Chairman. It's Russell. I don't think we need to condition it, because ultimately we can't condition other legislation. What we can do is put on an informative that reminds the applicant that they should be mindful of other legislation that relates to health and safety and the cleanliness of how that building operates. So I can certainly do that, and I can liaise with environmental health colleagues on what that legislation should be within that informative, if that's acceptable to you.
That's fine by me. Is that acceptable to you, Brian?
Yes, it's 30 years working in the packaging industry, so I know my stuff. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much. I've got Marie Bartlett who wants to say something, and also Sarah Wilkinson. Marie first.
Chairman, I just wanted to double check that everyone saw the presentation. I know I had a couple of issues here, and I just want to make sure that everyone who was in the meeting saw the presentation. Chairman, can you repeat that? You've had your microphone on mute.
Okay. If anyone couldn't see all of the presentation, can you indicate that in the meeting chat box? Right. Claire couldn't see it, but that doesn't matter too much because she hasn't got to vote on it. Others seem to be saying that they can. Can we move on to Sarah Wilkinson? You had a point to make about something? No?
Thank you, Chairman. Sorry, no, I didn't. I think there's some confusion. I was replying to a question of
right.
Claire's in regards to accessing the
Okay,
presentation.
that's fine.
My apologies.
Okay. Any more comments or questions?
Chair, I've written in the chat box that I'd like to speak, if I may.
Sorry, I missed that. Where is it? Well, you can speak anyway. Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, it was just Russell, I don't know if you can take us back to the front of the building, or it might be the back of the building, where you can see the hops plantation. I just think it's just worthwhile flagging up for members that hops actually grow to sort of 15 to 20 feet, and they require a structure to support them, a trellising, if you like. So from my mind, that would actually create more shielding, green shielding for the structure itself. I just wondered if Russell had a comment to make about that. That would change any of the recommendations within the report.
Russell? I think the issue is that you can grow hops on the field as it is now. But Russell, would you like to answer?
Chair, it was more the height. If you look at the actual, look at one of the indicative drawings, the hops look quite short. You know, about sort of 4 foot. And I was going to say that they grow much larger. So it's that whole visual impact.
Yeah.
There'll be a structure as well. Obviously, that structure will be bare during the winter months.
Yeah, I take your point, but I think you'll find that they could grow hops in the fields as it is. It's just an agricultural process.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Hopefully you can hear me now. I've got the thing to work. Yeah, the hop actually, and I've said it in the schedule of late reps. Sorry, the update paper. That hops could be grown on this site without planning permission, and the structure to support them would be considered effectively temporary. So I think you know, they would offer actually a screening. That's the way we've looked at it. It would offer a screening to the building when looking from the road. I think the applicant will need to consider the actual agronomy, the actual soil, if you like, to ensure that those hops actually could be grown on this site, that the soil is correct for that. But effectively, there'll be some sort of planting scheme in that area, and so therefore there is a landscaping condition on. But ultimately, that is agricultural use, as the Chairman has said.
Thank you very much, Russell.
I've got another point I'd like to just discuss very briefly, if I may, Chair.
Certainly, Julie, go ahead.
So it's on page B21, section 6.56, the environmental officer's comments regarding the brewing process. It's really just to clarify, only because I come from a place of knowledge on this, that the brewing process does not last an hour. It lasts much longer than an hour. But the end is a series of processes. But the end process of it boiling in the kettle, that takes about an hour. But there's a mash process beforehand which can produce odours and steam as well. But I think this kind of made fit for purpose industrial unit, all the proper ventilation's there. So it was just a point of clarification really for members.
Thank you very much, Julie. Would anyone else like to comment or ask a question? In that case, can I ask George to turn his comment into a resolution to accept this, approve this planning application?
Chairman, I believe Councillor Price had a question.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, sorry. Yeah. Okay, Councillor Price.
Thank you, Chairman. I think Councillor Cameron might have as well, prior to any recommendation. But just going to the access, obviously, just to clarify, the condition appears to be there for the footway to the bus stops. That all seems to be in place. But going back to the comments about the, sorry, could you clarify that, please, Russell? But going to the speed limit reduction that Councillor Mosdale mentioned, obviously, if we're connecting this site to two bus stops, essentially, which is obviously very much required, is reducing the speed limit not something we can at least recommend, even though we can't condition it, because it would perhaps help the local member work with the Highway Authority to achieve that aim of reducing the speed limit then at that point, because obviously people will need to cross the road, and anything other than 30 miles an hour there is not going to enable someone to cross the road safely. I appreciate it's not a planning matter, but I just wonder if there's a comment that will help the local member achieve that aim at a later date. Thank you.
If we minute that question in the minutes, then they can use that as a leverage that came from the planning committee. In terms of the issue that was raised in the chat bar by Claire, the condition at Sandown Airport wasn't that they had to get the 20-mile-an-hour limit. It was that the vision displays would only be operable if they could get a 20-mile-an-hour limit. George, did you have another question?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. It's just I noticed condition 4 is dealing with the bin stores. It's quite important because I'm sure this produces quite a volume of waste. What are the plans for that at the moment? Because surely it should form part of this application now, so we can see where the production of the waste is going and what's happening to it.
Russell, would you like to comment on that?
Yes, I mean, where the bin stores would go and all that kind of thing is a more detailed consideration, and often those kind of things aren't ready for when a planning application is submitted. So the actual how the building will exactly work is something no doubt the applicant will think about if they get permission. At the moment, there is a condition on there. From our point of view, the reason we haven't asked for exact details of where the waste will go at the moment is that this is a big site with potentially a big building on it if it's approved, which would screen any waste compartments. So we would expect them to go somewhere, no doubt, within the service yard, and we can agree those via the conditions to make sure that they're in the right place, and then they don't stick out, and that they look in keeping with the proposals if the application is approved. There was another point actually that Councillor Price made. He did ask whether the condition will secure the footpath link, I think, and just to clarify that it does. That was a recommendation made by Island Roads that I agree with, and what the planning authority agrees with. Although there is a wide verge going down one side of the road, it's not suitable obviously in winter to walk along there, particularly for all people, and so that is something that is secured by condition.
Okay, thank you very much, Russell. Are there any more questions or comments?
Yes, please. So I've just realised I've just been putting stuff in the chat box, and that's not what we're supposed to do. So I made two comments. Firstly, I would support Councillor Mosdell's call for reduction in speed. I believe it makes the whole site and the future of further parts of the site a more sustainable location. So it's what we want to be doing. So I agree with that. So if that could go forward as a recommendation from this committee, that's got my full support. And secondly, regarding waste, so dealing with spent grain and hops is a massive consideration for a brewery, and most often it goes to a local farm or collective farmers for animal feed and or composting. And of course, up the road, further up the road to Arreton, you've got the anaerobic digestive plant as well. So I imagine a lot of the waste will actually be dealt with off-site. So just to be helpful.
Okay, any other questions, comments? Would someone like to move a resolution to approve this planning application?
I'll move, Chair.
Thank you very much. And would someone second that?
I'll second that. Brian here.
Okay, thank you very much.
Chairman,
did you get that, Marie?
It's Ben Guard here, Chairman. Sorry to come in at this point. Could we just be clear on the terms of that resolution from Councillor Cameron in terms of his proposal? Are you proposing acceptance of the officer recommendation?
Officer recommendation with a proviso about the concerns that Councillor Tundell raised as well. Thank you.
Okay.
Do we need to actually make that, Russell? Do we need to make that as a condition, or is that going to be covered?
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I mean, as I've said, we can't make it a condition because it's separate legislation to the planning process. A bit like we put on the building regulations informatives, for example. We are just reminding the applicant to do something that they need to do via separate legislation. So we'll put it on as an informative, as Councillor Tinder has asked. And obviously, when we issue the decision, we can always issue a letter with it just to bolster that as well.
George, are you happy to accept that?
Yes, I'm happy with that, Chairman.
And accept the officer's report as stands?
As
yes.
Stands. Thank you very much. Yes.
That's seconded. We're going to have a named vote on all of our votes now, because it's the only way we can actually ensure that we get the voting process correct. So can we, if I go through, call your name, can you unmute yourself and say how you vote? Councillor Beston.
Thank you, Chairman. I fully support this application. Thank you.
Councillor Cameron.
Approved, Chairman.
Councillor Hollis.
Approved, Chairman.
Councillor Howe isn't here, is he? No. Councillor Jones-Evans.
For.
Councillor Kilpatrick, is he here now?
Approved.
Councillor Price.
Vote to approve, Chairman.
Councillor Tyndall.
I also vote to approve.
Councillor Smart.
Chairman, I believe Councillor Smart was indicating she was approving, but her microphone wasn't on, so it didn't go on audio. Can you ask her to clarify, please?
Yeah. Councillor Smart, can please?
I approve.
And I also vote to approve. Thank you very much. We move on to the next application.
Chairman, can I just the number of votes for were 9, none against and no abstentions.
Okay. And it was a unanimous decision. We move on to application 19-01227 for land south of Newclose Cricket Grounds, Blackwater Road in Newport. I think this is yours, isn't it, Sarah?
It is indeed, Chairman. Thank you.
Would you like to present your
Thank you once again, members. Please bear with me while I share my desktop with you so you can see the presentation. It may take a moment. Right, thank you, Chairman. Members, I believe you can now should all be able to see the presentation. The application site is located as shown on kind of the Google Earth image on the screen at the moment at the point of the cursor. It's an area of 4.41 hectares that's located approximately 1.6 miles from Newport Town Centre. It's on the western side of Blackwater Road to the south of what is Newclose Cricket Ground, which is located here. The closest residential properties adjoining the site are in this location. With a cluster of listed buildings that are referred to in the report opposite the site to the east in this location. You'll note the report also refers to the cycle track and the river that runs along the west of the site, and that's running along here in this pale line. That's the river to which the cycle track runs alongside. Moving through the slides. The application seeks consent for 28 glamping pods. These pods would be of 2 different sizes. 10 of the pods would be of 14 square metres and 18 of the pods would be of 30 square metres. The pods are located in and around, you'll see there the coloured dots effectively on this plan that you can see. They're located in 3 separate zones around the site in these areas. The application also includes a cluster of buildings in the centre here, which provide an amenities building and a reception. The car parking area for 28 cars would be located here. The application also includes for the provision of a bus stop either side of the road at the point shown here and here. A footpath would be provided from the site access to this footpath here, which members can see there. The application would also include a permissive footpath along the northern boundary of the site, which is the purple line you can see in this plan, which would then run down the edge of the site here and join with a new footbridge which would be located across the river to join the existing cycle track in this location. And the application would also include for 2 ponds in the lower part of the site here as the land drops towards this area. Members will note that condition 27 on the application recommends a limit to the numbers of buildings on site, so there can only be the 28 proposed pods, and that they are only in the locations as shown on this plan. That's a slightly closer in plan to show those coloured pods, the coloured dots, which would be the pods in relation to this application. Pods themselves would be circular and would be constructed of a kind of heavy duty PVC in an olive green shade. And while the amenities building, which would provide toilets with the reception area, would be of a timber construction. I will now move through relatively slowly. I won't say a lot to these slides because they effectively kind of speak for themselves, as it were, but they show the site from various different points. Members will note that each of these photographs is accompanied with a letter or a number which will relate to the area on site in which that photograph was taken. So I will run through these relatively slowly, but members will see this is the existing access point into the site, which would be utilised for the proposed application, together with the views up and down Blackwater Road. This photograph was taken in November 2019 and shows the relationship with the closest neighbouring property at the point of the cursor. You can see where that photograph was taken. A subsequent photograph was taken from a very similar location actually yesterday, which shows the difference in terms of the view when there is additional screening provided within the summer months and due to the overgrown nature of the site. Again, looking at some images running down that boundary towards the neighbouring property from the site. Image B is located relatively close to one of the proposed pods, although that would be located within a cluster of trees, as members can see from the plan. These images again show the view from the site looking up towards the neighbouring property and the intervening vegetation that currently sits on the site. And again, another range of photographs from the proposed car parking area, looking from the neighbouring property to the site itself, and then from the lower section of pods. Again, some relationships through the site and then from the adjacent land looking up towards the neighbouring property. These again explain where the photographs are taken from, but they are again at various points in and around the site, looking through the site this time rather than necessarily specifically looking at the relationship with neighbouring properties. And again, the layout plan, apologies, this is a little blurred. I've included this image from the applicant's design access statement to show an indicative example of what we mean by glamping pods. However, as members will note, the proposed pods are sought to be an olive green colour, so they wouldn't be the white coating that's seen within these images, but the kind of shape and style of them is as depicted here. I've also included a range of photographs from the nearby public rights of way. You'll see at the bottom image it indicates public right of way 38, 28 and 39. They're referred to in relation to this slide and the next slide. One element I did want to highlight to members is that as from footpath 38, which is this one, and the photographs here show the relationship between the site and the nearest listed buildings as referred to in the report. Members will note that from this image only the kind of gate entrance to that listed building is visible, and when looking from the access drive or public right of way that runs alongside the listed building, you cannot perceive the site from this point. That's just to indicate the relationship between the two. And then these are some photographs looking from west and from the east in relation to Marvel Lane, which if I flick back one, members will note is here. And then from the other footpaths that I indicated within the last slide. From these points, the cluster of trees are visible, but it's considered by officers that the site would not be highly visible due to the screening that they would provide. The application, as previously stated, incorporates the addition of a timber bridge to run along the public right-of-way, and this simply just shows the proposed kind of indicative appearance of that bridge, together with its position in relation to the site and the proposed screening belt that's shown on the plans between the footpath and the proposed pods lodges. For members' attention, that kind of screening belt that I referred to is shown in the green, it's all green, apologies, the slightly different shade of green at the base of this image. What these photographs also show is the relationship between the site and the cycle track at that point. And then moving through again, as you travel down the cycle track, the relationship with the site and the varying screening that those trees currently provide. And that concludes the presentation, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sarah. We have 3 presentations on this one. Dr. Simon Fordham as an objector, David Long as the agent, and Councillor Claire Mosdell again as a local member. Do we have Dr. Simon Fordham linked up?
Chairman, if you bear with me, they were asked to join at 5 o'clock, so you kind of rushed ahead. So if you bear with me, I'm just trying to see whether or not they've joined the meeting.
If anyone wants to come for a break, now's a good time.
Hi, Murray. Hello.
Well, hello, I can hear you as the chairman.
It's David Long here. I'm ready to go. I'm conscious Marie's still trying to deal with the objector.
Okay, thank you, David. It's good to have you here.
Chair, while we're waiting, cannot Claire give her piece now?
I think it would be better to have everyone here to go through. It is gone 5, so they were told to be here at 5, so they should be here any minute if they're going to make it.
Chairman, I'm quite happy to go first if it's out of protocol.
Let's just wait and see for Marie to come back and see if she's getting anywhere. Are you there, Marie?
Yeah, I'm having a few connection problems today. I've tried to invite Dr. Fordham into the meeting, I'm not getting any response back from him. Like I say, he did provide us with a written statement just in case things didn't go quite to plan.
We're 5:05, so he's 5 minutes after his
Can I
time
suggest?
to be.
Can I suggest that Maria or someone from Dem Services, whoever is able to read that out, reads it out, because we could be waiting.
That was just about what I was going to say. Marie, can you read it?
Chairman, it's Bengard here again. Apologies for interjecting. As you've invited members to take a comfort break, I think now would be a good time to do a quick roll call, if we could, just to make sure all members are back. Our Democratic Services present now. Marie, are you in?
Yeah.
Are you able to? I don't know how you want to run that. If you want to go run through the list and just ask people if they're present again, or.
Not a problem. Councillor Beston.
Present.
Councillor Cameron.
Present.
Councillor Hollis.
Present.
Councillor Jones Evans.
Yes, I'm here.
Okay. Councillor Kilpatrick.
Yeah, I'm here.
Councillor Tyndall.
Yes, present and correct.
Councillor Price.
Yes, present.
Councillor Smart.
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
I can, yeah.
Thank you.
Councillor Quirk. Is he still?
And I'm still here, yes.
Thank you,
So
Chair.
all present and correct. Marie, can you read the statement from Dr. whatever his name was? Dr. Simon Fordham.
Bear with me, I'm just opening it. Okay, it reads, I am Simon Fordham. I live in Birchfield House, which adjoins the site of this proposal. I am also acting as spokesperson for owner-occupiers of 6 neighbouring properties who have all previously raised objections and concerns about this application. The applicant seeks to set up a campsite in a semi-rural location beside one of the busiest roads on the island. He plans 28 double occupancy yurts with no insulation material or footings and 7 staff, 2 full-time, 5 part-time. At busy times with accompanying children, these may accommodate up to 100 people. This is a high density of low quality units with a single shared amenity block and no cooking or washing up facilities. This is not the kind of accommodation that the island should be promoting to tourists. It is not high quality, nor is it niche nor green, policy SP4 tourism. The application contains minimal details about the proposal. It has no support from local residents. Many concerns have been raised covering a wide range of issues, many of which remain unanswered. Insofar as these have been addressed in the planning officer's report, this is the form of a very large number of conditions. These will all too readily be available to free interpretation later out with public scrutiny. Many conditions also require ongoing monitoring, which may be difficult to carry out effectively. Of particular concern to neighbours of this site are road safety for pedestrians, bus passengers and cyclists accessing the site from the very busy A3020, which has no footpath or verge at this point. A tactile crossing was recommended but is not mentioned in the report. Impact on nearby properties from smoke and cooking smells generated by many outdoor barbecues and wood burners inside the yurts. There is also a substantial fire risk from these sources and discarded cigarettes given the nature of the site and highly flammable spruce trees. Impact of noise, as there will be much outdoor activity on the site, particularly at night. The neighbouring cricket club has conditions around noise and the proposed campsite is much closer to neighbouring properties. The report states that the campsite will not be hosting party events, but it's highly likely that visitors attending festivals and party events at the cricket club and other venues will use the campsite as convenient accommodation afterwards, expecting to continue in the party spirit late at night. Impact of ecology. Many mammals, birds and reptiles, including many protected species, are regularly sighted in the vicinity and enjoyed by local residents. Developing this site will remove the only area of quiet and wooded land between Newport and Blackwater. It is unclear how many trees will be removed from the site during development, or how large trees bordering the site on adjacent properties will be protected, in spite of representations to the Council's tree officer. This application appears to be unacceptably lacking in detail despite revision. Objections and concerns have been acknowledged but not adequately addressed. It is unlikely to benefit the local area or provide a quality experience for island visitors. It will be harmful to local ecology, cause nuisance and adverse impact on neighbouring residents.
Thank you very much, Marie. We now have David Long speaking as the agent. David, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman. I was interested to hear Councillor Mosdell's comments regarding Goddard's Brewery application in relation to COVID-19 and her expressing that we must do anything we can to support Isle of Wight tourism. So I'll be interested to see what she says regarding this project and possibly her level of objection. But just turning to the objectors' comments re connectivity and safety re cycle and pedestrians, obviously the revised application has gone to great lengths to improve its accessibility and connectivity through the bus stops, and actually the link to the cycle network, which connects all of the major towns within the bay and the Medina Valley. And so we've worked really hard with the local authority to ensure those connections can occur, and indeed those connections go far and above what other tourism sites have to do in more remote locations. And actually we see this site being carefully balanced. It is within a semi-rural area within a lovely treescape, and that treescape actually provides its unique selling point. But the benefit being is actually it's in close proximity to Newport, Cowes and actually Sandown on bike quite easily. Indeed, I cycled from Sandown to the site the other day and it took no more than 30 minutes, and quite a pleasurable route along that cycle network, which is something that the Isle of Wight Council want to support. And actually within these difficult economic times, why not support the high streets of Newport with close proximity, good quality camping sites in relation to it? We can't put camping sites closer to Newport because obviously there are a lot of buildings adjacent to it. So we think this is a really carefully balanced good site to benefit a good target audience. There are plenty of kind of similar glamping sites that offer a similar style of accommodation across the island, and I've noted the objection saying that this might not be viable, etc., but all of those other sites are booming and viable. The thing that's holding us back at the moment is the virus, but actually once the virus has hopefully sorted itself out, we see that UK tourism and particularly Isle of Wight tourism will be particularly strong. And that's something that we should all really rely on, as Councillor Mosdell expressed within the Goddard's application. So members, I truly hope that you can support this application. It is in a great location. We've done everything possible to make it a really good site. It isn't that dense given the size of the area. The units are quite in keeping with the woodland setting. Yes, some trees will be removed, but it is part of its unique selling point, and therefore the foliage is part of its character. It becomes part and parcel with the actual product that we're producing. And equally, it is very well shielded, screened and nestled into the landscape, and it will benefit the rural economy and the urban one as well. So members, I do urge you to support the application. It is a great project and I hope you can see the benefits arising from it. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, David. Now we have the local member. Claire, you have 5 minutes.
Thank you, and thank you, David Long. I would like to say that yes, of course, you know, I'm the first one to encourage tourism on the island, but actually I would like to pick this site up and move it somewhere where it's not on one of the busiest roads on the island. Having canvassed that road more times than I care to imagine, I've done that walk from Mole Country Valley stores up to basically where the end of their houses and you actually take your life in your hands. I do like the fact that they have said that there will now be a cycle path, but has anybody really tried to do a cycle path in the pitch black when they've been into Newport for a nice curry or use one of the restaurants in Newport? Good luck with that, because actually I think that's the one thing they're going to do is try and walk back across that really, really dangerous roads. Yes, I do encourage tourism, but I want safe tourism. There is no mention of infrastructure on that site, especially lighting, and then we have to have that balance of lighting, because even at night there would be a need for low-level safety lighting, which could compromise some of the area's dark skies policies. There are concerns about security with an open access site, and there is no mention of CCTV or 24-hour staffing. Nearby residents, and that's what I'm here for, I'm elected to represent the residents' views. They do have concerns that there would now be access to rear of their properties by the proposed bridge over the river. Bus stops have been proposed, but if you try and cross that road from the far side of the road, it's extremely dangerous without a dedicated crossing. Yes, on the Branstone application, I asked for the traffic to be reduced to 30 miles an hour, but actually that 30 is just extending a 30 that already goes to the junction. You wouldn't be able to put a 30 miles an hour on the middle of the main Newport road at that section, just as you're going into Newport. I don't think that that would be practical, and I don't see how there would be a safe crossing there. I also don't think that a zebra crossing would work, because I think someone will get mowed over, and when they step out on it. We've seen that happen at Apps Heath in the past. The parking, I don't think it's adequate. I think that there is a recommended 28 spaces, one for each yurt, but this does not allow for any staff parking at all. The toilet, I have to say I'm not a fan of glamping. I'm a bit of a 5-star girl, but I sort of get it, it's sort of, but I still think there should be more toilet and shower facilities. I don't think that those that have been shown are adequate for the potential numbers of visitors. I don't think there's enough detail on the arrangements for waste disposal, sewage discharge, surface water runoff. Is the site permeable to allow the water to soak away naturally? I don't think those questions have really been answered yet, and I think those do need to be given some consideration. I do have concerns about smoke from wood burning stoves. I see inside the glamping sites that there would be wood burning stoves. I'm still not got to grips if that's environmentally friendly or not environmentally friendly, or how it works, but I know that they smell quite bad if the wrong wood and everything's put in with them, so I'd like some more explanation on that. And given to the proximity to the river and the damp air, I would have thought that there would be lots of use for those wood burning stoves. Doesn't appear to be any cooking or washing up facilities, and barbecues should they be encouraged in such a woodland tree covered area? I really do have a concern about the time limits that you can set on this site. As I said, I'm the first to encourage tourism, but actually if this is near a residential area and we've already got restrictions on Newclose Cricket Ground of Cricket Club of 11 p.m, how can that be enforced if there is a time set on this? I can't see anybody going along, or the police going out to break up a party, in the middle of a campsite, which, as we've already ascertained, could have 100 people there. I really need to see more on what's actually mentioned of the bat survey. We've never seen a full bat survey in that site, and there's no mention of the red squirrels that we know that inhabit that area. Neither of those have I seen any sites undertaken for that. I also don't have sufficient details on the ponds, how deep they would be, what construction would be used, what safety precautions would be taken. I know they look really pretty, but actually we're talking a site that families are being encouraged to go to. There is nothing more dangerous than an unsafe pond. When I've got a 3-year-old granddaughter, I would want to know that how it was banked up, how it would be, what safety measures would be taken into account. But my main concern is how dangerous that road is. And as I said, I do really like the fact that they've got a cycle path going through, but I really can't see who's going to use that at night. People will be going out and walking on that road that I don't think enough has been addressed for safety. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Claire. Sarah, do you have any comments to reply?
Yes, please, Chairman, if I could just make a couple of points, that would be great. I just wanted to cover a couple of points. In the main, members will have to balance what the report says in relation to what they've heard from the public speakers in relation to this application. And I'm not going to go into detail responding to every point that's been raised. The application is for a campsite, in essence, a glamping site. As David Long has indicated, we have a significant number of this type of site across the island. It's not unusual for them to be located in a semi-rural area or to be located in relative close proximity to residential properties. It's ultimately a camping site on the island and a tourism offer. I just wanted to raise a couple of points in relation to some of the comments. Please bear with me while I flick back through the presentation. The first in relation to walking in the road at night. Yes, I admit that you are unlikely to walk along the cycle track at night, but considering the proximity from the town centre, I'm also not convinced personally that somebody would also choose to walk in the main highway from Newport to this site, because there are also not footpaths the entire route. So I would suggest if somebody did choose to go out for a curry to Newport town centre, they would most likely either get a bus or a taxi back and utilise the space available. But I think both comments, but whether it be using the cycle track or the road, are speculation in terms of how people may choose to use that site. I wanted to just go back to this photograph because this shows the image looking up and down the road from close to those bus stops. What this does show, and what Island Roads have confirmed in their comments, is that there is substantial visibility in both directions when you're standing at that stop. So there is complying with all the requirements that you would be able to see quite clearly approaching vehicles when you are making that crossing. The road is only the width of two vehicles. It's not a kind of dual carriageway or a double carriageway, it's a standard carriageway, and you would have clear visibility in either direction when you were making that crossing, or undertaking that crossing, I should say. In relation to the comments on waste, drainage, sewage disposal, all of those points, I would highlight to members the conditions that are stipulated in the report. I should also highlight, actually, because I didn't earlier, that there is some comments in the update paper for this item, which I would draw members' attention to, that they had earlier in the day. The other point I just wanted to raise was that a number of times I think reference has been made to families and the noise or the association or the safety of the proposed ponds and different elements like that. One thing I'd highlight to members is, you may have seen from the layout plan, but as is indicated within the supporting documentation for this application, that each yurt would contain a double bed. These aren't designed primarily for large-scale family groups. We're not looking at a site that is a family campsite in the true sense of that you come with a 6-person tent. This is a site which would propose a number of kind of pre-formed glamping pods, which would contain a double bed, and the larger units would contain some areas of seating associated with those. Which I will just, if I can get the slides to move back, bear with me, show the internal layout of those units again, which might help with this. In terms of the size we're talking about, they're not huge. They're not designed primarily for families to occupy a single pod. And there are some images there that show the smaller pod and then the larger pod with that single bed, or sorry, double bed, but provision for a couple in essence. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Sarah. Can I ask everyone to not use the meeting chat other than to say if you want to speak? It's very, when you get half a dozen messages come up, it's very easy to miss someone who's asking to speak. I have Councillor Tyndall so far.
Can I go ahead now?
Go ahead, Brian.
Okay. One is about the car parking. It says 28 car parking spaces, but when Sarah originally spoke, she said double occupancy of these, which implied 2 families, but now you're saying there's only one double bed for 2 people, one presumes. But the car parking where it is, to my mind, it needs to be physically coned off from the rest of the site, because I can see people driving up There may only be footpaths. They'll drive everywhere on that site. They can't get there. So I'm suggesting if we get permission, that area, the whole road in and the actual car park itself, it actually has some barriers around it so the cars can't go any further. But I take Claire's point, there's no room for any extra for staff. So where are they going to go? And equally, the toilet facilities there, I don't think are adequate. You've got 4 sinks in the men's and the women's, a few loos, but what's going to happen on these far-reaching yurts in the distance? People will just be disappearing into the bushes. Either two toilet blocks would be a better idea, so people will go to them. Otherwise, but the trees and everything else, it'll become a cesspit. And I agree with Claire also about the ponds, dangerous places to go if you have kids running around everywhere. So that's it. And the last thing is, I take it the cycle route that goes, we're talking about, going along by the river, I take it that's the old railway track. So when as Bob Seeley gets his way, we'll have a railway line running up and down there, so it won't be in existence anyway. You know more about that than me, Chris. That's my concerns. The car parking needs to be barried off. Toilet facilities inadequate, need to be either expanded or 2 in there. I'll leave the officer to.
Just for confirmation there, the railway, if it happens, will come in from the other side of Newport. It won't affect this railway, this track, and I can't see that happening for a very long while. Right, I've got Julie Jones-Evans.
Thank you, Chair. Just a few observations. I've actually been glamping and stayed in a yurt before, so I have sort of some familiarisation with how it goes. And glamping, you know, by definition, is glamorous camping. And normally in these situations, in fact, you'll see them across the Isle of Wight. We do have many sort of glamping sites. You often get your own facilities within your space as well. So I'm guessing that the toilets. The toilet block will be sort of ancillary and extra ones if you you know need to have more of a space to do that. So I don't see that sort of getting back to what Councillor Tyndall just said. I don't see that as an option, an issue. And again, you know, having been to a place like Butlins and Centre Parks, you know, they have water there as well. So I think that it's the environmental side of it. I think is a sound reason to have the ponds, and I think, you know, I don't believe there's any indication that this area is going to be mismanaged at all. And picking up on the parking discussion just now, what normally happens, you're allowed to drive to your pod, your accommodation, you take everything out, and then you drive and park back again. You normally have a sort of a time whether you can do that. So I think taking the parking away completely might not be actually that practical, and might actually impede on people's accessibility if they have any mobility or other issues. So I'm actually quite comfortable with this application. I think it's a great addition to our tourism offer, and especially given, you know, this current circumstances where we are going to be looking at our domestic market and even our island market. So it could be sort of, I think people are going to be rediscovering their doorstep over this summer, and perhaps the year to come as well, how long this goes on for. So I think it's a great location. You know, I think it adds to the area, and you know, these, in my experience, these places are quiet, sort of, you know, relatively peaceful sorts of sites, and normally you get, when you get to book these sorts of places, they ask you if you're part of a big party. So I think that if there's going to be a condition at all, if people are concerned about the noise and big parties going on, you could perhaps say that it's not it can't be used for single groups, but that might be going a step too far. As I say, I don't think this is the intention to make this a party land on the Blackwater Road. And I like the fact that you've got that the bridge over the cycle path. It actually really reminds me of the proposal we had further along a few months ago at Moles for the retail and the craft application back there. Again, there was a little proposed bridge, and there's actually a cycle hire there as well. So I think making this a corridor for more use, mixed use, as well as community use, I think is excellent. So yeah, I would be happy to put my name to put this forward as a proposal in accordance with the office recommendation and with said attached conditions.
Thank you very much, Julie. I'll come back to you on that. We've got 4 people who want to speak. Councillor Beston, Councillor Price, Councillor Hollis and Councillor Kilpatrick. Councillor Beston, would you like to start, Mike?
Thank you, Chairman. I'll just say I'm, after reading the application in full, I'm minded to support this application itself, but there are just a question and an observation, if you like, or perhaps Sarah could pick up on these questions after. There's obviously going to be an electrical supply into the site that would need to power the reception building and probably the ablution block, but that fits in with paragraph 28, and Councillor Mosdell has already picked up on that. External lighting. Now, I know this is not in front of us here today to make a decision on, but I assume there's an assumption that any lighting that is sited within the site would be of an LED type light that will fit in, low lighting, and comply, if you like, with the dark skies policy that we currently have on the island. So just a clarification on that, if we possibly could. And the observation, the 28 car parking spaces, as already mentioned, there's an assumption that all visitors to the island, or even visitors to this particular site, will be using a vehicle, and that's probably not always true. Our visitors use all means of transport, public transport, train, ferry, etc. And once on the island, they will probably walk or use a sustainable type of transport, i.e. a bicycle. So I wouldn't get too hung up on 28 bay parking spaces, to be perfectly honest, but that's just an observation. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Councillor Beston. Sarah, would you like to come back on that clarification?
Yes, Chairman, thank you. I am just trying to find, I believe, but bear with me one moment, that we have conditioned the matter of lighting in relation to ensure, yes, so condition 28 ultimately restricts the installation of any lighting other than that to be agreed, to which we would agree the type, the height, the luminance and the location and the fixings, together with kind of a curfew for periods in which that lighting would be turned off, which may actually restrict it to just kind of motion lighting in certain times to ensure that that protects both the amenities of residents, the dark skies, as you can see, for the reason of that condition, and also nature conservation. So hopefully that will answer that question. I did also, while we were on the conditions, just want to draw members' attention to condition 22, which may help to alleviate other concerns that have been raised in discussions, which deals with details of the fencing around the pond areas, which may help to reassure members in relation to that element of the site also. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Sarah. Councillor Price.
Thank you, Chairman. Couple of questions, but first, just to sort of comment on the safety of Blackwater Road. I don't think we should, you know, not at least comment again on the safety of Blackwater Road. It is a dangerous road, as Blackwater Shoot is. They're probably, those two roads are probably home to some of the worst accidents that have occurred on the island. But on a road like Blackwater Road, actually probably having more large sized driveways and entrances into properties like this actually will naturally slow the traffic down. I would think, using some common sense, but you know, and you couldn't reduce it to 30 there. It wouldn't work. I do understand that, but I just wanted to sort of, you know, agree with Councillor Mosdale on the safety of the road there. But the public right of way that runs around the site, I'm trying to sort of understand what the improvement is to be to that. I found obviously in the report that we've got on B60 paragraph 14 where it says a little bit about it, but can I just clarify that the public right of way that goes around the site and links up to the bridge is what is stated in the report as being upgraded. I just don't want us to fall foul of it being just the bit that runs through the site, which is obviously not publicly accessible, because I see this as a way of enabling a link to the well-used cycle path on the old railway line to Blackwater Road, whereas at the moment you have to access it either at Blackwater or at Newport, but there are obviously many other public rights of way that come and meet Blackwater Road, and it means that you then have to take your life in your hands on Blackwater Road on a bike or on foot to access the path that's already there along the old railway line. So I just wondered if Sarah could clarify that it is the whole of that public right of way and what exactly is looking to be achieved through the conditions. Thank you.
Yes, Chairman. If you bear with me, oh sorry, Councillor Price, if Chairman's happy for me to come back on that.
Go ahead.
I at the moment have just had a pop-up on my screen to say that my presentation has ended and that somebody else has started to share. So bear with me a moment while I hope that somebody magical in the background is resolving that and will tell me what I need to do to get that presentation back up. But what I am going to try and do, if it will allow me to share again, is show members the layout plan which shows that path, and I think it will allow the question to be answered that Councillor Price is raising. But in essence, the path that runs, let me see if I can do this again, please bear with me, members. The path that runs along the northern boundary of the site, hopefully members can all see the presentation now and can see the cursor running along that. It's a purple line on this plan. What members will hopefully see is that that is actually due to be a permissive path. It's not just for use of the site. It would be a new permissive path that would run down this boundary, it's the purple area here, and would then join in to the new bridge here, which would link to the public right of way. If what members will note in the officer's report is page, I'm wondering if I've got a connection issue. No, so in the recommendations, so in paragraph 8.1, the application would be subject to a planning obligation, which would include both the maintenance of the footpath, the bridge across the river, but also that route would be permissive and would be allowed for public access. So this purple line would not be solely for the use by the residents of the site. It would be open for the general public to access Blackwater Road from the cycle track. So I hope that answers Matt's question. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Sarah.
Sorry, could I just ask one more thing, please?
Go ahead.
First of all, thank you for that, Sarah. That totally answers my question. Just bearing in mind the you know, the concerns from local residents, who I absolutely respect their views. And we saw that picture taken in the winter of the vegetation around the back of that property, and then we saw it taken yesterday or whenever it was. But clearly we've just gone through quite a period of immense growth of vegetation and so on. I just wonder whether it would be sensible for us to introduce a condition for the, because it doesn't appear to be any additional planting around that boundary to that property, whether we could look to condition some evergreen established evergreen shrubs around the whole of that that boundary. It's not a huge boundary. I mean, it probably is when it comes down to cost, but you know, that would absolutely benefit the neighbouring property, who is clearly going to be most affected by this. So I was wondering if you would consider, or the officers would consider, that would be an acceptable condition to add. Thank you.
Sarah, would you like to come back on that?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I think what I will just draw members' attention to is condition 23, that requires the submission of a detailed landscaping scheme indicating kind of existing trees, hedgerows on the land, and those that will be retained, together with the soft landscaping proposals. That includes, for details, shall include the retention and enhancement of trees and vegetation landscaping along the southern boundary of the site. Between the proposed glamping pods and the camping area and the southern boundary, and to provide a 15-metre buffer zone around trees marked, and then it lists those number of trees. So certainly I think that condition currently allows for or requires the submission of details to enhance that southern boundary, but I'm happy if members see it fit to incorporate a requirement that the landscaping along the southern part of the boundary with the neighbouring property is undertaken as an evergreen feature rather than deciduous, if that's considered to be necessary in addition to that condition.
Thank you very much. Does that answer your question? Right. Can we go on to Councillor Harless, Richard?
Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Can indeed.
You hear me?
Yeah, can indeed.
Right. I will say right from the beginning, I don't think I've seen such an unsuitable site for a camping site for a long time. You are in between a cricket ground and a whole lot of residential houses. And the reason why I say this is, if you look at glamping elsewhere, I mean, you take Tapnells, it's well away from where people live. And I think this has so many flaws in it. I will whiz through them. I think the car parking is totally inadequate. There's no staff car parking. I think the concept that people are going to be, you're asking them to walk along a grass verge to get to from the bus stop, etc. I think that's ludicrous. Wet weather, I mean, it's just, I just don't think that's practical. It's not a standard we set on the island. The cooking facilities. There are no cooking facilities, and it emphasises the fact that they'll be using barbecues and then have and also wood burning stoves. Well, actually, if you which are wood burning stoves are now being discouraged in certain by the government because of the carbon footprint. And if you look at policy number DM1, the first thing in policy DM1, it says, and I'll quote, development of the island should include measures to reduce carbon dioxide emissions. And this whole site relies upon carbon dioxide emissions from 28 individual glamping facilities. There's something else in the report that I find very disturbing. The drainage, there's no mains drainage, so it goes into a drainage system. And it actually says in the report that should that draining system be not be able to cope, the excess will drain into one of the ponds. Great. So we're now putting sewage into a pond, which will then flow into the eventually work its way into a watercourse. That is totally illegal, and I'm really surprised that that's there. We have the question of lighting. Remember that the residents, and we have our dark skies policy, but you've got to light this site, and you've got to light this site so people can walk around it at night. I really think this is. I just don't think this is the right place. But I'll go back to the cooking. On the map there, where the proposed bridge is, roughly the western side. Presumably the map is north-south. A prevailing wind will take cooking from barbecues, etc. If it's full up, 28 across people's gardens and their houses. I think this is totally unacceptable. You know, there are no other cooking facilities, and as someone pointed out, there's no washing up facilities. Perhaps you do that in your glamping tent, but you know, so is that. Then we have the question of the noise. I don't know who actually wants to go glamping next door to an extremely busy main road, but for the residents themselves, you've got 28 yurts, which, you know, people have to sit outside, and then you've got all the noise on quiet evenings, and then on the other side, if the wind's in a different direction, you're trying to use a cricket ground, and you've got smoke and barbecue, etc., blowing over a cricket ground. I mean, I just think it's crazy. The other thing is that all these trees, it says in the report that gradually they'll be replaced because they're not long term. And it says they will be replaced with with natural trees in the country. Our trees are all deciduous. Wintertime, you won't have the cover, so it will affect the site views from the listed building and elsewhere. And I can't say that plastic covered tents are the most attractive thing that we should be looking at. So I think it's very detrimental to the quality of life for the nearby residents. It is a rural area. It's outside the settlement area, but you have to me it's almost like a shanty town, and I may be a bit unfair that because, you know, glamping sites do work, but I think it's a nice idea, but totally in the wrong place. I do worry about this, the CO2 emissions. That is not a direction we should be going down to increase this so sort of blatantly. I think it has it's a bad aspect of this, and I think it fails SP1 anyway, which on 29 of the island plan. It's appropriate land. It must enhance. It's supposed to enhance. Paragraph 2. In all cases of development on non-previously developed land, it will need to clearly demonstrate how it will enhance the character and context of the local area. I can't see that a campsite here is going to enhance that area for residents and where it's been seen from footpaths. So I think it fails there. I think it fails DM2, which is on page 137. It's supposed to, a built environment is supposed to give a sense of place. I don't think this gives a sense of place at all. And again, the design has got to protect, conserve and enhance. I just don't think this is the right place. Anyway, I've said enough, but I hope you'll actually see this in a different light. I feel extremely sorry for those residents. Bear in mind that the cricket ground decision was very controversial and on it was fine balance. And I think this is where it tips it way over. Anyway, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Richard. I have several people asking to speak. I will get you all in order. Oliver Bolter wanted to make a comment. Ollie?
Thank you, Chair. Hopefully you can all see and hear me, members. I just wanted to make a quick point. It's been raised a couple of times in relation to this debate, and whilst recognising that the lighting and related to dark skies issue is covered by proposed condition 28 in the officer's report, I would just make it clear for members so they are fully aware that we do not have a current planning policy relating to specifically to the issue of dark skies. This proposed site is not within the AONB, so isn't able to be linked to the aspirations of the AONB management plan. So I think whilst there is the potential, as the discussions have indicated, that there is a potential impact on amenity in terms of lighting and pollution, that is an issue relating to DM2. And as I've said, we do not have a specific dark skies policy in our current policies. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. I now have Councillor Kilpatrick.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to echo Councillor. Excuse me, might go on a bit. Yeah, just the last councillor who spoke.
Councillor Hollis.
Yeah, it's Hollis went. Yeah, sorry, Richard. I think this is quite a low grade, stack them high and sell them cheap kind of policy. Completely in the wrong place, and I certainly won't be voting for it. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you very much. Shirley, Councillor Smart. Councillor Smart, Shirley.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Councillor Smart appears to have muted herself again.
Shirley, we think you've muted yourself.
Is that better?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Oh, I don't know what's. Oh, no. It was some time ago that I wanted to speak. I just want to emphasise that I'm not at all happy about this application. Mainly, I'm afraid, because of the well, A, where it is, full stop, but in particular where it is compared with the small group of houses, because smells, noise, etc. But I'm afraid because of the dryness, it is my fear that it only needs a spark and the whole lot will go up. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Smart. Councillor Jones-Evans, you wanted to come back.
Oh yes, it was just to point out the cricket ground, Chairman. So just to the north and to the right of the site plan we've got at the moment, you'll see it's a long grey sort of oblong. I don't know if an officer can. That's it. Yeah. So that is in fact a massive marquee which is used for weddings. It's used for all-day events. It's used for catering, lots of parties. So we've already got the use in the area of a different use, a leisure use apart from the cricket in that area. So just wanted to point that out to members, because this is a mixed use area, and there hasn't been any issues with that. It's a marquee, but it's up all the time. It has the relevant environmental health restrictions on it as well. I just think it's a great opportunity to have some camping directly connected to Newport. And if you've ever been around Cornwall, they have campsites everywhere, and a lot of them are on very busy roads. And it's just, if you like camping, this is like quite an ideal site. It's got nice accessibility. You can cycle there as well. Go to a town. I think it's a great location, and we can't all be Tapnell Farm. Sometimes small is beautiful. That's all I've got to say.
Thank you very much, Julie. Councillor Price, Matt, you wanted a supplementary.
Sorry, Chairman, no, I already had that, thank you. But just to say, reiterate that if we do go to a proposal, that I would definitely want to see that condition that the evergreens, established evergreens, are planted around the boundary of the existing property that we've previously spoke about. Thank you.
That's already in the conditions that it has to be approved by officers. It's I'm not sure that we need to put another condition on.
Chairman?
Yep.
May I just make one more comment?
Yes, certainly, Richard. Go ahead.
I also do not feel that the fire risk has been anything like thought out enough. These are, are large Christmas trees. You have dry weather, and you've got all these barbecues, etc., in a dense, the density of these trees. One lot, and the whole lot burns down.
Exactly.
And you would, we would, as an authority, I'm surprised it's actually not in the report, but as an authority, well, I would not want to be responsible at all for passing something with this sort of environment, and you're asking people to have, sparks go from barbecues. If you get a windy day, it's I just find it incredible. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you. I've got one last request to speak from Councillor Cameron. George.
Thank you, Chairman. I've looked at this and I've camped quite a lot in my life, and I don't think the facilities is adequate to provide, enough. The ablution blocks is too small. That should be double the size it is, and I'm very concerned about the wastewater, the water drainage. I don't think the plans are enough for that, and the site is not quite right for that type of facility. Thank you.
If now somebody can make a proposal, can I suggest that Councillor Jones-Evans proposes acceptance, and we'll see whether that goes through or not.
Yes, Chair, thank you. I'm happy to propose this, accepting the recommendation by officers, including all of the conditions and highlighting the condition that Councillor Price mentioned about the evergreens for the shielding and shading.
Would someone like to second that?
I'm quite happy to second that, Chairman.
Councillor Besson, thank you very much. Can we go to the vote? Again, it will be personal vote. So, Marie, can you take the vote? Hello, Marie. Are you there?
Chairman, I believe she may well be having some connection problems. If you're comfortable to call out the names and the members could acknowledge, please. I'm
happy to call out the
Is it just worth mentioning that there are some connection problems in Newport, and Councillor Brodie isn't able to connect to the meeting at the moment, so I don't know what provision we've made for that as regarding member involvement.
The provision is if you aren't there for the whole of the session, then you have to abstain on that item. That's the guidance. Councillor Brodie is actually no longer a member of this committee.
Okay, I wasn't aware. Okay, sorry.
Chairman, if I could just say something, Chairman. What Councillor Jones-Evans is referring to is we understand that Councillor Brodie's not a member of the planning committee, but he is observing, and apparently there is a major power cut in most of Newport at the moment, which is going to be present till 9 o'clock. And I think it was just to put on record that probably many members of the public that may have been accessing this meeting or had been trying to are not able to because there is a major power outage. Thank you.
Yeah, we can note that, but that doesn't mean that we don't proceed with the meeting. So we're going to the vote. Councillor Beston.
Thank you, Chairman. I support this application, including the conditions as mentioned. Thank you.
Councillor Cameron.
I vote against this application, Chairman.
Councillor Hollis.
Against.
Councillor Jones-Evans.
For.
Councillor Kilpatrick.
Against.
Councillor Price.
Vote for approval of this application with the condition of the evergreen shrubs around the neighbouring property. Thank you.
Councillor Tyndall. Councillor Tyndall.
Yeah, sorry, against.
Councillor Smart.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Against.
Councillor Quirk, 4. That's 4 votes for, 5 votes against. Someone now needs to put together a rationale for the refusal.
Chairman, it's Ben Gard again here. I believe Councillor Hollis was just indicating he may be prepared to make a proposal.
Thank you very much.
Yes, I think this it fails SP1, which I'll just look at my notes. It fails to enhance the character and context of the local area, and particularly for the local residents, in the view of the concentration of barbecues and wood burning stoves, and in that it fails DM1 because it fails to effectively reduce CO2 emissions. It does not. It only adds to CO2 emissions. I also had it fails DM2. Let me just look that up. 137. 137. Yes, DM2 development proposals are expected to provide an attractive, functional. Well, attractive is subjective there. A functional, yeah, okay, accessible. I think the access is actually not that brilliant. I think the bus stops are very woefully inadequate and serve footpaths. Safe. I couldn't think of a more unsafe situation. With a sense of place. Well, it doesn't fit in with a cricket ground. It could be detrimental to the cricket ground, and also it doesn't. It's very close to the neighbouring properties, with the prevailing southwesterly wind taking smoke and fumes, etc., and noise straight into their properties. In the summertime, people like to have the windows open, and so I think it fails that. I'm not going to go any more than that, but I would summarise it's detrimental to the quality of life for local residents and their well-being. And I've explained enough. I'm sure the officers can summarise what I've said. It's all recorded anyway. So if I leave it at that. I also there's the question of the sewerage. It says so in the report that flows into one of the ponds. I can't quite see how that's acceptable, but I won't add that to this.
Okay, thank you very much, Richard. To officers, do you think you can craft that into an acceptable rationale for rejecting this?
Thank you, Chairman. Hopefully you can hear me. I have some concerns with regards to any reference to the CO2 emissions resulting from the log burners. I personally think that on the basis that this is a camping site, I think that we may struggle in relation to anything referring to the additional CO2 emissions from the nature of the accommodation. It's obviously up to members whether they wish to incorporate that within the definition, but on the basis that environmental health are happy and that relative kind of filters and whatnot can be incorporated, I just worry that could weaken the position if that was incorporated. In relation to the other matters, should members see it necessary, I haven't crafted some exact wording, but what I've noted down is that we're looking at 2 reasons. one of which I've got more concerns over, which I'll get to, but the other one would be that the application fails to enhance the character and context of the local area and would impact on the amenities of neighbouring properties due to potential for noise and smoke, as well as the visual impact, which would in turn have a detrimental impact on the quality of life of those residents. I understand that there's a secondary reason potentially in relation to highway safety. I have concerns over that in relation to the comments from Island Roads and the fact that I don't believe we could adequately defend a point in relation to the accessibility of the site being unacceptable, because it does have a bus stop, it does have a cycle link to the rear. I would be concerned over arguing that point at any future appeal, but obviously if members disagree and wish to incorporate one on accessibility and highway safety, then that is entirely up to them. I would advise against that one, but in relation to the impact on neighbours, we could craft something along the grounds of both the impact on neighbours and the character and context of the local area in relation to the nature of the development proposed.
Sarah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Richard Hollis, I'm happy to withdraw the thing about the part about the bus stop.
Lovely.
Okay. And the other one that you're not happy, you were concerned about. So it's 6 on the one. Yeah.
Sarah, if we give you 5 minutes, could you craft that into an actual statement?
Yes, Chairman, if you give me 2 minutes, I'm working on it now, and I will try and word something that actually sounds like a reason for refusal. Bear with me 1 moment.
Okay, I'm going to declare a 5-minute comfort break to give Sarah the chance to put that together for us. Anyone who needs to go and get a drink or anything else, please go now. You've got 5 minutes. Hello, Sarah. How are you going?
Hello, Chairman. Thank you. I have drafted one. I am just waiting for confirmation from Ollie Ollie Russell and Ben Gard that it follows what they consider to be acceptable and appropriate. Just to ensure that I have the other officers' input into the wording, and hopefully we will be ready to present shortly. Hopefully, I presume that Ben will require us to do another roll call on members.
Yes,
It
absolutely.
is hopefully once that we think all members are back and that happens, we will have a reason for you.
Okay. Are members back? Let's do the roll call of members. Councillor Beston.
Present, Chairman.
Councillor Cameron.
Present, Chairman.
Councillor Hollis.
Present, Chairman.
Councillor Jones-Evans.
I'm here.
Councillor Kilpatrick.
I'm present.
Councillor Price.
Present, Chairman.
Councillor Tyndall. Councillor Tyndall. Yeah. Councillor Smart.
Yes, I'm here.
Councillor Quirk. Yes, I'm here. Okay, we're all back in position. Once the officers have decided it's okay, we'll start again.
Thank you. Would you like me to read what I have so far for members to consider? Ultimately, Councillor Hollis, this would be taking on board the points that you raised. I have at the moment drafted the proposed development fails to preserve and enhance the context and character of the local area, as well as having a detrimental impact on the amenities of neighbouring properties, which would in turn impact upon their quality of life, contrary to policies SP1 and DM2.
Yeah.
I'd be delighted to second that.
Okay, Richard, just happy with that? Richard, are you happy?
Yes, I'm fine. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you for your help.
Okay, and Shirley, you seconded that?
Yeah.
Okay, so we go to the vote. Councillor Beston.
Chairman, sorry, it's Ben Gard again here. Sorry, just for absolute clarification, what members are doing now are voting whether or not they support this proposal.
Yeah.
So if you support this proposal to refuse, you need to indicate that you support this proposal. If you are against this proposal to refuse, you need to indicate that you are against this proposal. If you support this proposal, then the application will be refused for the reasons as per Councillor Hollis's reasons for refusal, as Sarah Wilkinson articulated. So if you support the proposal to refuse, the application will be refused. If you are against the proposal to refuse, then you need to vote against the proposal. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Ben. Councillor Beston.
Against this proposal, Chairman.
Councillor Cameron.
I support this proposal, Chairman.
Councillor Hollis.
I support the proposal, Chairman.
Councillor Jones-Evans. Councillor Jones-Evans.
Pardon. I don't support the proposal. Against, Chairman.
Councillor Kilpatrick.
I support the proposal.
Councillor Price.
I'm against the proposal to refuse this application.
Councillor Tyndall.
I support the proposal to refuse.
Councillor Smart.
Support.
Councillor Quirk. Object. So we have it 5 votes to 4. Again, the motion is carried. We now move on to the next item on the agenda, which is item 20001834, Ocean Bay Beach Shop and Public Conveniences, Pier Street, Sandown. Would the officer like to present?
Oh, for goodness sake.
Come on, Sarah.
We can't hear you, Sarah.
Can you see the presentation, members?
You can see the presentation. Yeah.
Fabulous. Okay, lovely. Apologies. It's all a bit slow. I think the network connection is struggling a bit this evening, so my apologies. The application site is located on the northwestern side of the Esplanade in Sandown, located at the point of the cursor here on the Google Earth image. It is to the southeast of Pier Street and very close to the pier itself, which is here. The application seeks consent for the redevelopment of the existing public toilets and building here, that members will know, for its use for 2 commercial units and some new toilets. If I run through some images of the building that members will know, currently it's in a very public place in Sandown. Looking at the building both from Pier Street from above, it's currently a single story and sits in here. Again, this being the building and the plant are referred to. The front of the building when you stand at the pier and look across, and then the other elevation of that building. Again, running through some images of that area, this showing the existing elevations against the existing photographs. Hopefully members are aware of this building. As stated, the application seeks consent for 2 commercial units. This would be achieved by the demolition of the planter that I referred to in the previous photographs, as well as a first floor extension. This plan shows the existing internal layout for that building, the existing planter being in this location. The application would see a building constructed in this position to provide the toilet facility. This would include 6 toilets, as well as an accessible, which would include an accessible toilet, as well as a changing places facility. The application site would be would also include this building here, which would have a commercial unit at ground floor, or lower ground floor I should say, coming in from the Esplanade, and then moving through the plans, a further facility shown to be a restaurant at first floor level from the Esplanade, but at ground floor level from Pier Street at this point. That accommodation would be provided through the addition of an extension at first floor level, which would be constructed in the main of glazing. The remainder of the building and the toilet block itself would be constructed of white render. The frame of the building overhang and the window frames would be of a powder coated aluminium. These showing the elevations of that building from the different angles effectively. And again, elevation of that from the Esplanade together with a cross section of that building. Within the cross section, members will note the top of the existing building, so you can see the relationship between that and what would be the first floor extension, yet a single story building when viewing the site from Pier Street. Just moving through some images that have been submitted that show the scale parameters of the building in relation to those existing views, in relation to the before as photographs and after as photo montages, or not photo montages, apologies, kind of visual representations of that as you move down Pier Street. And again, an image showing the single story nature of the building from Pier Street, acknowledging that it utilises the levels available but would be 2-story when viewing the site from the Esplanade. And that concludes the presentation. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Sarah. We have just lost it. Sorry, I've just lost the page. We have 4 presenters. Paul Cruisant supporting, Chris Ashman on behalf of the applicant, Guy Eads as an objector, and Councillor Ian Ward as a local member. Marie, do we have people in contact?
Chairman, if I may, in the event that Maria is having connection problems, we have been provided with a statement from two of the speakers, Mr. Culin and Mr. Eds, which I will read out at the appropriate point.
In which case, would you like to read out the supporter presentation from Paul Creatant?
Culin, certainly, Chairman. It reads as follows. I'm speaking as a Sandown resident and founder of Our Sandown, the local history and community group with over 2,000 members. It's very disappointing to learn that significant parts of the regeneration team's proposal for the Pier Street public space have been withdrawn because of objections by Island Roads. The original plans formed a public presentation to Sandown residents in November 2019, and these were still the plans when the main public consultation was underway barely 2 months later. The regenerations team's proposals offered an exciting framework for enhanced commercial and public use of this compact site in the town's public domain since Victorian times. They included potential for a public performance space which would play to the town's present day strengths with its carnival and other performance events. The original plans also had flower beds and planters across the site, a feature strongly supported by Sandown Green Town volunteers, but both the performance and planting elements have been stripped out of the plans because of Island Road's objections. I understand that a statement yesterday by Sandown South Councillor Ian Ward that discussions will now take place between regeneration officers and Island Roads to try and settle the so-called multi-use elements which have been removed. May I suggest the committee's decision on Pier Street is deferred until council officers are able to resolve these important questions and report back, ideally to the next meeting or the one after. Sandown deserves the best possible regeneration for this site.
Thank you very much. Chris Ashman, are you there? Yes,
Thank you, Chair. Yes.
You've got 1.5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. Much appreciated. As Director of Regeneration, I wanted to speak in support of the application. And obviously, members will be aware it's quite a small site, but it's actually a very significant one with a potentially big impact. And I just wanted to make members aware of the context of this project in relation to the wider Eastern Bay strategy, which was agreed by members in 2018. What we have here is a key tourism opportunity area on the island. And a need to balance an improvement for an amenity, i.e. public access to quality public facilities in one of the most busy areas of the island, and an opportunity to diversify and upgrade the current restaurant offer that exists in Sandown Bay. It also will act as a key anchor point for the improvements to the revetment that we're working on with local town and parish councils to actually see increased amenity and utility of the whole of the revetment. And last but not least, I just wanted to emphasise that modernisation agenda as far as providing quality facilities to improve the tourism area.
Thank you very much, Chris. We now have a Officer Red report from Guy Eads. Sarah, you're going to read that?
I am indeed, Chairman. Bear with me one moment while it opens up. I'm having slight difficulties with the document opening at the moment. If you could just give me one moment. It is saying it is doing so, so please bear with me. Apologies for this. Okay. Oh no, is that yes. So this reads as follows. The committee should support the principle of building new toilet facilities in this location and also the proposal to combine a further dual-use role for the site and building. However, the design of the current building proposed is not suitable and should be rethought. The design and building materials are not suitable for this focal point in Sandown Conservation Area. The materials for the toilet block and adjacent building will not weather well in this exposed marine environment, as the examples nearby of the toilet block buildings on the Avenue Slipway Culver Parade, nor are the materials of the building, aluminium, steel, concrete and glass, consistent with the adjacent buildings in the conservation area. See instead light yellow London brick of Royal Pier Hotel opposite, and local flint and lime as the walls in the adjacent streets. The site has had several previous uses and footprints as a bandstand, terrace and steps and ornamental gardens, so following the current rectangular footprint is not a requisite, and a more innovative design solution should be developed using the curved sloping nature of the site. So approve the principle to develop the site, but invite other more appropriate design solutions for the actual building structure, giving full approval.
Thank you very much, Sarah. Now we have the local member to speak, Councillor Ian Ward.
Thank you, Chairman. Am I allowed to comment on the other speakers?
You're allowed to use your 5 minutes as you wish.
Oh, right. OK. If I could just put you in the picture of Mr. Quellen. Mr. Quellen says he represents 20,000 people or 2,000 people or whatever it is. Strangely enough, the objections I've had, I could put on. I wouldn't even need a full hand. There we go. Although I've had many messages of support for it. As for Mr. Eads likes Sandown the way it is, and if you seek to change it, he will object. It's as simple as that. I've come across him before. So if I can carry on with my speech, I'd like to give you some history to this development. Over 8 years ago, it was realised that Pier Street Toilets was nearing the end of its life and they needed considerable work to remedy its structural problems. That's one of the reasons Sandown Town Council didn't take it on, because of the state of the building. As now, back then, funding was a problem and it was thought best to seek a commercial partner. Our property department started to market the site and I was told there were at least 2 potential partners who had expressed interest. Unfortunately, the administration of the council changed in 2013 and the project seemed to be abandoned for the 4 years of that duration. As you would expect, the building continued to deteriorate, problems accumulated, and the site attracted considerable criticism for a council building on the seafront. When this administration returned to office in 2017, to re-establish the project. Fortunately, our regeneration officers had identified the necessity and the potential of a redevelopment of the site. I have fully supported their efforts over the last few years, while designs were drawn up and a very effective public consultation was held in Sandown. However, the inevitable happened and the building deteriorated further to the point it had to be closed on safety grounds. We are now at the point that something has to be done, and soon. This is a prime site on Sandown seafront, and it would make a considerable contribution to the regeneration of the town. It would boost tourism footfall, create jobs for our young and maybe not so young, as well as helping generally to increase the town's tourism economy. It would also supply 21st century toilet facilities for our residents and toilets alike. The public consultation did attract a few requests for a multi-purpose area within the developments. So the architects did incorporate such a facility, which include modifications to the road layout in that front of the building. Unfortunately, Island Roads, as a statutory consultee, expressed safety concerns for that proposed layout. While the multi-use facility has temporarily been dropped from the application to give time for the redesign of the facility, can I ask officers to press ahead with that redesign? Sandown residents have waited 8 years so far for these 3 developments. Please do not delay it further. The aim is to have it open for the 2021 season. Any delay would put this project back at least another year. Thank you, Chairman and colleagues.
Thank you very much, Ian. Sarah, do you want to make any comments?
I suppose only, thank you, Chairman, only to say that in essence, should members approve the development this evening, it wouldn't restrict the ability for a further in a kind of addition to a scheme later that involved some form of highway alteration or works, but it would be a separate application, but the 2 elements can be separated for the purposes of consideration this evening. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Does anyone have any questions or clarifications that they want on the detail before we start to discuss it?
I would like to, if I may, Chris.
Go ahead.
It's I support the idea and going ahead, but I take it the public toilets are still in use, and if they were, they're not still in use.
They're closed. Place is falling down.
Okay. Because one of the suggestions was to make it, when they do the building work, they have some temporary toilets available to relieve the old vulnerable people. But if they're not in use now, then there's no point. Okay.
Yep. Okay. Any further clarifications?
Councillor Jones-Evans, Chairman.
Yep. Oh, sorry. Yes. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. So I'm just going back to the highways issues, and in the report, if members want to follow what I'm talking about, page B76, and the highway considerations, so B 6.24. It was the lack of detail that then Island Roads couldn't make a decision about. So they wanted more detail, and that wasn't then given. They withdrew that. They didn't sort of make that clear. So that's why we lost it. And I mean, I'm really sort of a bit confused about that, really. Because not Island Roads sort of saying they're against it. It was just they needed more detail. So why couldn't we give more time to this to make it just fit for purpose and to give us everything that we wanted from this development? If that could be answered, that'd be helpful.
Sarah, would you like to answer that?
Yes, Chairman, thank you. I just wanted to clarify, really, that it wasn't solely a lack of information that resulted in the recommendation for refusal from Island Roads. They in essence raised concerns over the highway safety associated with proposed alterations, because they would have seen large vehicles reversing into an area of high pedestrian footfall, and there was concern over the amount of conflict associated with that. In addition to the concerns in relation to highway safety, there was also concern over the level of detail in relation to the carriageway, footway, other kind of details. Those details in isolation could have potentially been conditioned or dealt with subsequently, but the fundamental issue was a safety concern, and obviously any alterations that might be undertaken to a public highway would potentially require a stopping up order, which is an entirely separate process outside the planning process. So there were questions at that point over the achievability of what was being proposed, which would have a greater impact on the accessibility of the building itself. So it was felt actually more appropriate to look at the building as a building in itself, with the area that's currently available to the front of it, because there would be a small area, and then the possibility of, if the area was solely to be used for performance space, whether a temporary road closure could be put in place for the purposes of that event, or whether it was necessary to have some more fundamental kind of highway works to be undertaken. But as outlined in paragraph 6.23 of the report, that was a highway safety issue. 6.24 outlines that in addition to the highway safety issue, there was also an element of insufficient information. So it was a twofold point. It may be that Alan White wishes to add to that, just for clarity, if Chairman wishes to bring him in at that point. He has indicated that he would be happy to.
Alan, would you like to comment?
Can you hear me, Chairman? Okay.
Yes, we can.
Yeah, I think, to be honest, that Sarah has covered all of the issues there, really. The fundamental highways reason for objection was because of the concern over conflict between service vehicles, vehicles turning, and high level of pedestrian footfall. So like Sarah said, whilst there were some minor issues that could potentially have been covered by condition, the perceived high safety risk was quite fundamental.
While you're there, Alan,
Yeah.
not to make it part of this application, but it would seem to me, and I suspect most people who've been there, that that should actually be a pedestrianised area. What are the issues around that?
At present, the area provides the facility for service vehicles to access the frontage of the pier. It also acts as a turning facility for large vehicles and the likes. If it were to be remodelled, it could physically be remodelled, but there would also be a number of existing traffic regulation orders as well that would need to be changed.
Okay, thank you. Anyone wishes to make a comment?
Councillor Beston, Chairman.
Yes, please.
I wanted a supplementary, if I may, to that.
Okay, yeah.
Thank you. Yes, what was I'd be interested to know what the counts were of these large vehicles. Daily counts coming in this area, please, or daily counts that we have at the moment, and also, well, not right this now, we're in lockdown, but and also what sort of vehicle access, if this was in place, would you be expecting as well?
Alan, would you like to comment on that?
Yeah, we don't actually have any figures in terms of the daily vehicle flow through there at the moment, but it's the fundamental fact that at present the layout allows vehicles to pass in one direction across the frontage of the site with no need for a turning conflict with pedestrians.
Yeah, thank you, Alan. I just feel that this is an ideal opportunity to put people first in this. What is a wonderful space we've got for Sandown, you know, a lovely vista and a place where people will throng and congregate, and you know, I can just imagine all of that outdoor theatres and markets and all that. It just sounds really vibrant, and to put that at risk, you know, a cultural a regeneration project, put all that at risk for the sake of some vehicles that might have to do some more manoeuvring and might have to take more care or have a banksman or something. It just seems to be, I can't imagine there'd be that many vehicles a day doing it. That's all. I just think that I'm weighing up in my mind, and I just think I should put people first, really.
I think the only issue there is supplying the pier and possibly this new building if we approve it. So I can't imagine that there are a vast number of vehicles involved. Anyone else want to comment?
Yes, please, Chairman.
Yep, go ahead.
Thank you. Just an observation, and wearing my scrutiny hat and looking at paragraph 6.27, and it refers to the parking provision assessment. That was carried out in October to aid members, if you like, for the future. Could we actually be looking at a PPA that refers to, or an historic PPA that refers to the summer months? I know this probably won't make a lot of difference in determining the application itself, because we're looking for pedestrian use and there are other provisions of car parking in the town, but to look at a PPA that was carried out in October, to me, is not sending out the correct figures, but that's just an observation. The other consideration is the Premier Inn that's now in construction and hopefully behind schedule, but hopefully will be completed very shortly. There will be an additional demand for on-street parking along the Esplanade, so that is a consideration. And just the final thing, I mean, anyone that knows that particular site and Sandown, and particularly Pier Street is the road that runs down to the Esplanade on a very sharp incline, actually, to a left-hand bend. When you get to that bend, the separation of vehicle traffic from any pedestrian is obviously a curb and then an iron railing and then the original brick planter. If the plans, and I know that the pedestrian areas will need to be agreed, but there has to be a physical separation from vehicles to pedestrians. To me, that is an accident in waiting. On balance, I support this particular application. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. I'm getting requests from people who are not members of the committee to speak. Only members of the planning committee can speak at the committee meeting. Is there anyone else who would like to? Julie, did you get your supplementary in? Would someone like to move this to a vote then? Would someone like to propose that we accept this this application?
Chairman.
I'd like to. Oh.
Okay, so proposed by Councillor Beston, seconded by Councillor Jones-Evans.
No, I'm not seconding. I'm putting a counter proposal.
Oh, well, we've got a seconder for the first proposal.
Chairman, I'll second the recommendation that it's given conditional permission.
So we have a proposal and seconded. We have a vote on what we've got proposed and seconded.
Chairman,
Maria, are you there?
Chairman, it's Ben Guard again. I think Maria is still having difficulties connecting. She is. I understand that our clerks can hear what's going on still. Just to be clear, with Councillor Beston's proposal, that's approval in accordance with officer recommendation. Councillor Beston, that's correct, and that's seconded by Councillor Hollis, who made that clear. So we do have a proposal seconded for approval in accordance with officer recommendation. Chair, that is a proposal that you can move to the vote if you so wish.
Yeah, I feel that I didn't get an opportunity to put my. I think it was a dead heat there, really, and I didn't get a chance to put my proposal forward. I was about to.
Tell us what we would like to put forward.
Well, I think we should actually defer this. I think the loss of the pedestrian area is actually fundamental to this application, and I think we should defer this until it's fit for purpose. I think it's fantastic so far, but you know, why not get it right? I think Sandown deserves it.
Okay, if the motion that we've got proposed and seconded fails, you can put your proposal. I'm going to take it to the vote.
Chairman, if I can just at that point as well, I think it might assist members of the committee if no one is prepared to second any amendment on that basis, but it's not really an amendment because it is a separate proposal. But the officers, I think, have already identified. Sarah Wilkinson has already confirmed that the two items could be considered separately, so the item could come back. And I think if Sarah Wilkinson wants to come in at this point, just to clarify that.
Sarah, would you like to?
Thank you, Chairman. I would suggest that any future highway works would not be impacted on as a result of approving the development that's in front of members this morning. They're not, that one doesn't require the other element to be done as one kind of together scheme. They're not attached in any way, so you could approve the building and then at a later date look at highway enhancements to the scheme if it was seen as necessary. Obviously at the moment there's a fundamental concern in terms of highway safety with regards to them, so it's whether members think actually to approve the development as it stands and then later come back with some enhancements would be an appropriate way forward. Thank you, Chairman. Okay,
we're putting it to the vote on the proposal to accept the officer's recommendation. Councillor Beston.
I support this application, Chairman.
Councillor Cameron, I think he's left. He's apologised, we're going to have to leave. I think he's left. Councillor Hollis.
For.
Councillor Jones-Evans.
I'm against because I want it to be a split decision. I can't support it as is. I need to have a split decision on this. Take removal of the highways as Sarah Wilkinson suggested.
Councillor Kilpatrick.
For.
Councillor Price.
Yeah, I'm only hesitating because I would like to see Julie's suggestion taken into account, but I really do not want to vote against this in any way. So unfortunately, I'm going to have to vote for in that respect.
Thank you. Councillor Tyndall.
Sorry, I'm for it.
Councillor Smart. Councillor Smart.
I believe she's trying to indicate for, Chairman, but her microphone is off again.
Okay. And Councillor Quirk in favour. The motion is carried. Back to the agenda. Members' question time. Is Maria there to be able to tell us whether we've got any members' questions?
Chairman, I'm not aware that Marie is able to connect at the moment, but she hasn't indicated to me that she's received any formal questions. Obviously, if any have been submitted and I'm incorrect in that statement, then obviously we would publish those after this meeting anyway. I can quickly go and check if you want to have a shorter just down the
if any member here has raised a question, please indicate it in the meeting chat. As of yesterday, I confirmed with Marie that she hadn't, but that the deadline wasn't actually passed at that point. Assuming that if that's there are no questions, then we close the meeting at 6:48. Thank you very much for attending.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Bye.
Bye.
Bye now. Thank you.
Oh, you got back, Marie.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can you just confirm that there weren't any members' questions, Marie?
Put something in the chat bar, there weren't anything.
That's brilliant. Okay.